What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the BizDad Podcast. Today, I am stoked to have a long chat with Garr. We just met, got to know each other a little bit. We were trying to figure out how we even got connected, and I think through our assistants, who are no longer our assistants anymore, managed to connect us. So now we got to figure out what we're going to do after that assistants leaving problem that we have. But Garr, really looking forward to having a conversation with you. If you can, please go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell us about your family and tell us about your business.
Yes, sir, Adam. I'm excited to be on with you as well. My name is Garr Russell. We're a full-time family. We traveled full-time for 5 years. We've been back in a house now. We've got a 16-year-old as our oldest, and she wanted a little bit of stability in life before we kicked her out at 18. So we thought we'd give that to her. We have a 14-year-old boy, Garrison, a 10-year-old boy, Noah, and an 8-year-old Isabella. And we are a homeschool family. We are an entrepreneurial family. We are a family of disciples who love the Lord. Married to my beautiful bride, Tina, for almost 20 years. And I just recorded a podcast before this one, and the guy said his final question: if you could be at a table with 3 people and have a meal, I picked Jesus, my grandma Emma, and my wife. And as I said, my wife, I got a little choked up because I realized, oh my gosh, I love my wife so much. So that's a little bit about me.
Welcome to the BizDad Podcast, where we dive into the melding of fathership and entrepreneurship with your host, the original BizDad himself, Adam LeBar. Adam is a Christian, a former Air Force officer, a dad to 3 amazing kids, a coach, a real estate investor, and a business owner. On this podcast, he'll explore the unique journeys of amazing dads who are striving for greatness in both business and family. So whether you're a dad who is an aspiring entrepreneur, a seasoned business owner, or simply a man striving to be a better dad, get ready as the BizDad brings you conversations to inspire, challenge, and equip you to be a better dad and entrepreneur. And now, here's Adam.
Awesome. Yeah, the loving of your wife thing seems to be a neglected thing nowadays from time to time, or at least an ignored thing. Maybe not necessarily neglected, but ignored. So I love to hear that. That's she would be one of the people at my table as well. Not your wife, obviously, but my wife would be at the table. But if you can, I see the shirt there, the hoodie. Clearly, you must be from Florida because you're wearing a hoodie in Florida. So, and it's a little chilly down here. So you got to be going, man, oh man, it's cold. I need my hoodie. But tell me about Fireside. What you got going on there?
Yeah, so we are an RV rental company. And basically what we are is the RVs that we rent out, they're other people's RVs. So we're a franchise opportunity. My franchisees are basically in property management. So people give us possession of their RVs. We group them together, typically at like a storage facility. It's real low overhead, the business model. And then we rent them out on behalf for the owners. We get to send families on vacation. The owners make some money when their RV would just be sitting around doing nothing. And it's a business for Christian entrepreneurs is mainly who we serve.
Awesome. Well, as I told you before we started recording, I'm in the market for an RV. And funny enough, hopefully I'll have something figured out before this goes out so nobody goes and steals it. But there is a guy selling his RV rental business here in my local area. So I've been reaching out, trying to find out some more information on it. But if I get more information, I'll let you know. I'll stay connected and see if maybe it would make sense. I think he's got like 18 RVs on his local rental. So I'll see how all that goes. But awesome. But I want to rewind a little bit just to learn a little bit more about you and kind of where you come from. If you can, tell us a little bit about what it was like for you growing up, especially kind of the aspect of your father, what kind of relationship you had, how all of that kind of went growing up, and what you learned or what you ran away from, what you ran toward, all that type of stuff.
Yeah, I love this question, Adam. We just had our Fireside retreat over near Tampa last week, and the whole theme of it was faith over fear. And more specifically, it was kind of going back into our past with the Holy Spirit as our guide and just uncovering lies, just uncovering situations in life that allowed us to believe a lie that kind of shaped who we were up until present day. And so when you told me you were going to ask me this question, I loved it because literally before our retreat, God woke me up the other day at 4:14 in the morning. And one of my God spots is my hot tub. That's actually how we ended up down here in Florida. Was I wanted a campground with a hot tub, and that's how we ended up in Okeechobee at this Gateway. And normally when I go in the hot tub, I love it because it is my, like I said, my God spot where I can just sit, right? It forces me to sit and relax and just and unwind. But this morning, when I did this, the Lord told me to bring my phone, which was unusual. And so I get into the hot tub with my phone and I open up a Google Doc and I just start voice texting into this Google Doc. 45 minutes later, I'm about to pass out because I've been in the hot tub so long. At 103, I get out of the hot tub, come into my bedroom here, and I continue. And literally, Adam, 5 hours later, I have what turned into a 33-page document of the Lord walking me through my life, specifically related to being an entrepreneur, all the way back to second grade. I'm coming home from church. I'm handing my dad this rock that I painted for him. He's on the couch, passed out, hungover from the night before. And there starts my story all the way up until my daughter, my 8-year-old Isabella, walks into my bedroom 5 hours later with this box, which actually, you want me to show it to you? I've got it right here next to me.
Yeah, it'd be great.
Box that she designed because we're getting ready for our fireside retreat and we're going to hand out awards and stuff like that. And she opens this box and she's got all these pictures, Isabella to you, just all these different things. And then she pauses and she's like, Daddy, I got one more thing. And like, I did not want to give it. She said, I told God I didn't want to give it because my best friend Coral gave me this gift. She's like, but God just kept asking me, would you please just give it to him? It'll mean a lot. And she reaches in her box and she pulls out a stone. And the stone theme was in 4 different situations all through this 33-page document. And it was beautiful. And I'll kind of skip over that right now. I'll go back. So in my 33-page document that the Lord downloaded to me, there was Gary 1.0 and Gary 2.0. My biological dad's name is Gary. My stepdad's name is Gary. And have you ever read their book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad?
Well, of course.
So I didn't realize this till the other morning, but God was showing me the correlation between the Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which my stepfather, Gary 2.0, he wasn't necessarily rich, but he had all the ingredients of the rich dad. He knew how to sell. He knew how to he knew all those skills. And so anyway, man, God just walked me through this whole beautiful encounter with him. It was like this. If you ever heard of Theo Fosdick's prayer ministry, it was like this whole prayer ministry, revelation, freedom, just this very in-depth, amazing experience.
Man, that sounds absolutely nuts. Like I couldn't imagine as that was going and just the conversation you were having. And I'm imagining you saved that doc. And are you planning to do anything with that document, or is it just something that you're going to kind of store and keep for your own sake?
No, I'm a huge believer. I love the scripture and Revelations that we overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony. So that document became the framework for our fireside retreat that we just did. And my editor is already working on turning it into a book because, man, that freedom wasn't just for me. You know, it's like I think it's in Corinthians. The scripture says that we are ministers of reconciliation. So the same freedom that we receive, that we go out as ministers and bring that same freedom to others. So she's already started forming it and everything. And yeah, it's going to be a book that I'll give away on our website and then probably put it on Amazon to just encourage others as well.
That's awesome. I really love that. So you mentioned in there having Gary 1.0 and Gary 2.0. So kind of walk me through, I mean, all the way back, you mentioned, being second grade, trying to give the rock to your dad who was hungover from the night before. Was that your real dad or your stepdad at that point?
Yeah, that was my real dad. And right around that time, so my mother is passed away. My real dad, him and I talk every Monday, but he has a very bad memory. So when you start to like go back into your childhood, and he carries a lot of guilt and shame. So I try not to ask him too many questions. But somewhere around there, my parents got divorced between second and fifth grade. God took me to that next memory in fifth grade and it was just, man, I was a wreck, Adam. I don't know if I cried so many times.
Yeah.
God takes me to this next memory in fifth grade. My dad's laying on a couch. I go to him with a business proposal. I wanted to start a lawn care business. So I had written out this one-page proposal. I needed $500. And I talk about this in my last book, my real estate story. I needed $500 to start this business because I was going to buy several mowers. I was going to have kids push them around while I go land the accounts. I'm a businessman. I'm not going to be pushing mowers. I'm going to be selling. I'm going to be doing the sales. And in my book, I write about how my dad laughed at me and called me lazy, and it literally marked me for, heck, I don't know, 30 years. It marked me, and it wasn't until the other morning when I had this beautiful moment with the Lord where the Lord showed me that that was partially true, the reality of how I thought it was, but the enemy had kind of whispered some lies in there.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that God showed me that my dad had said is my dad told me in that moment, we have a lawnmower, go out and start doing the thing and then go from there. I didn't recollect that memory for 30 years until God showed me the fullness of that story, that yes, my dad was not an entrepreneur like me. And so there was some things he said that did cause some hurt. But on the other side, what was my dad? My dad was a hard worker. Like, it brings me to tears. My dad had an amazing work ethic, and he still does. He's got Parkinson's now, and he can't work. But what does he do? He'll go golfing with his buddies, and what does he do? He's out there an hour or two beforehand, and he's fixing divots, and he's just doing things to do things. I'll talk to him in the morning, and he'll wake up and he'll tell me about how hard he worked in his dreams that night before. Because he can't work physically anymore, but he's like, "Oh, son, I was working last night in my dreams. I was taking care of the facility and doing all these things." And
Nice.
So God, spoke some truth there. And yeah, my dad had his issues. He was an alcoholic. He was a playboy. I remember when I was 18, I lived on a yacht in Minnesota on the St. Croix River in Stillwater with my dad and his business partner. And they would literally bring women in and out of the boat, back and forth from the bar, as I'm sitting there and I'm watching my dad in this lifestyle. And years later, God got a hold of his heart. He got back on track with the Lord, and we have a good relationship today. So that's Gary 1.0.
I would imagine there was a lot of hurt that was harbored over the years on how all of that went down and what you were holding on to. Was it all the way until just recently that you kind of started to deal with a lot of that and understand a lot of that, or had you already worked through all of that before this sit down with the Lord you had?
No, this was probably session number 3 with the Lord. The first one was I was in jail. I love the scripture that says the gifts and callings of God are without repentance. So the gifts and skills that God put inside of me before I was walking with the Lord, before I gave my life to the Lord in 2003, I was a very successful drug dealer. So I ended up having my business and I had my employees, but it was not a legal one. That came crashing down one day. Once I learned that the police are a lot more sophisticated than a young drug dealer. And so when I was serving my time for getting raided for maintaining a drug home, there was some healing that came there. I don't even necessarily know that I realized it was with the Lord. It was more I just had time to reflect, And because even when I was in jail during that time, I had a man, Jesse, who gave me a Bible and shared some scriptures, but I didn't like get any revelation, or I didn't feel the weight of my sin, and I didn't receive Jesus or any of those things. I picked up some good principles and had some good time to reflect. And then after I got out and I gave my life to the Lord and I started my first business, which that happened. I was fired from my job for sharing my faith. That's a whole nother cool story. And that pushed me into my entrepreneurial journey. That's where I really, I love it, entrepreneurship, especially as a Christian, because man, just walking the Christian journey alone is a hard thing to do, right? Just being pruned by the Lord and just all the things that God walks us through. Try being a Christian entrepreneur. That's like one on top of the other. That's like you're a Christian, but then you get married and you realize, holy smokes, there's a lot more to life than just me.
Yeah.
Married now. Try throwing entrepreneurship in there as well, where you have to learn sales and overcoming objections and how to balance a budget and all the things and marketing and a lot of things were coming to surface in me as an entrepreneur, right? And that's where God started to bring some healing and show me that some of the lies I was believing are not true. I am an entrepreneur. I've always been an entrepreneur. God made me an entrepreneur, and so I remember I sent my dad a message too, and it was dumb the way I sent it. I really wasn't protecting his heart. I was very young in the Lord and just kind of like, hey, I was like basically exposing him in not a good way. And he responded, you definitely have your way of seeing how it happened. I have my way, and I love you, son, or something like that,
Yeah, that's some of that work is some of the hardest work it is to go through, especially if you're doing it at a young age and you're trying to work through it. And, the testosterone comes out in your voice as opposed to the logic and wisdom that happens in your 30s and 40s, But I'm happy to hear that you kind of work through some of that. I'd say as you're fathering 4 kids yourself and you're kind of walking through this entrepreneur journey, thankfully on the brighter side of things, instead of being a drug dealer entrepreneur, you're on a better side of things, representing different things to your kids. What is it that you look back on the most about your dad that you kind of say, you know what? These things here are what I want to instill in my kids. The things that I saw, these 3 things, or these 5 things that I saw my dad do, I really want to make sure I'm representing the same way with my kids.
Yeah. My dad, he was very good with physical touch, the hugs and the kisses and all those kind of things. And that is definitely one thing that is very, all the way down to, like my 16-year-old, like she's going to be an adult soon, but she still needs dad's touch. She still needs the hugs and the rubs and the kisses and all those things. So that was definitely one of the big things I picked up from my dad. And it was a little interesting too, because, when all the years of my dad being an alcoholic, unfortunately, what I remember is him coming in and kissing and hugging on me and just reeking like alcohol. So it's like a good and a bad memory, but I still, that physical touch. And then the work ethic. My dad is a very hard worker. And that's one thing that I've picked up from him that we definitely instill in our kids. And then I would say those are the 2 main things with my dad. The biggest thing I picked up from my dad that I try to avoid is my dad is just, he's a man of regrets. Like every time we talk on the phone, oh, son, I regret this. Oh, son, I regret that. Oh, I wish I would have done that better. And it's just, I just hate seeing him beat himself up so much over things that they're in the past. They're done and gone. There's nothing that could be done.
It's one of those, but he is a Christian now, you said? Okay. Yeah. And that's one of those, you mentioned the word earlier, you didn't feel the weight of your sin on you yet. That's one of those things that, especially when you have a rather checkered past, it's one of those that weight can hold on you pretty hard. And even though you're a Christian and even though you know that, Jesus died on the cross for that sin, boy, oh boy, that doesn't mean that people didn't feel it while you were doing it, and that's tough. That's hard to hold on to. Well, let's kind of fast forward. Obviously you said you've been an entrepreneur basically your whole life, and you've told a few different things about that. How did you turn drug dealing into RV dealing? How did that kind of come about in your life?
Yeah, so once I got out of jail for the running the drug home, I went back to one of my old employers and I asked them to give me another shot, which they gracefully did. And at that job, I met my friend Skip, who led me to the Lord. And so literally, I'm at this job and I'm still living a similar lifestyle, right? I'm still doing drugs and drinking and all that kind of stuff. And Skip led me to the Lord there, literally one night at the time clock, and I had this radical salvation. I mean, I just literally what. So I got saved right there at the time clock. Then I went with him to church that Sunday, and it was a mega church. And you go up for the altar call, and then they bring you into this room afterwards to pray with you. Like literally, nobody was able to do anything in that room because I was crying and wailing and like snot, and like it was so loud and just crazy that nobody could even, it was like, I just felt the grace of God so heavy. That's one thing my wife says about me. Like, you could literally break in my home and steal all my possessions. And tomorrow I totally forgive you because I've been forgiven so much. I can forgive so much. Um, so I had this radical transformation take place there. So I literally went from just getting my job back as a laborer to promotion, promotion, promotion. Eventually, I'm managing a crew of about 30 guys. And I went on my first mission trip during that time. I saw a blind person get their sight back. I just saw the miracles of God. I put my hands on this girl's neck that was swollen and God healed her. It just all this amazing things took place. So then I'm just at work. I'm on fire for the Lord. I'm, praying for people and just having all this amazing stuff. Well, I'm discipling my employees, and some of my employees were a part of a high school like work program. And so I talked to these young guys about Jesus and this and that. And one boy that was really just, we were having great conversations. One day I wrote out a scripture and I gave it to him to take home. And the scripture was, be prepared to always to give a defense for the hope that lies within you. Well, his mom saw this scripture and she thought I was challenging his beliefs. And this kid happened to be the vice president's nephew. And so now he all of a sudden he had it out for me. And one event led to the next. And they literally called me up to the front office one day, said, here's a severance package. You sign the paper right now and take the severance package, and you go your way and you get this check. If you don't, well, then you're just fired. So they basically, just forced me into quitting my job. Cool side story about that. The vice president's brother, who was our operations manager, I got to witness to him a whole bunch. And when I went to that mission trip, I told about the miracles and we just had these amazing talks in his office. The day I was getting fired, the Holy Spirit told me I was going to get fired that day. So I go up to this guy, Matt, who I just talked to him last night. We were just on the phone last night catching up. And I told him, he's like, oh, Garr, there you go again with your crazy stories, man. You cracked me up. Literally within a couple hours, Garr Russell to the front office, please. Garr Russell to the front. And I'm like all excited, like, yeah, it's happening. Watch. Here we go, God. They bring me up. I get fired. And basically that's what kind of shoved me into my entrepreneurial journey was I got fired from that job. That was right around 2008 when everything was crashing.
Wonderful timing. Yeah.
Yeah, wonderful timing. We had been trying for 6 months to have a baby. No luck. I get fired. Congrats, you're pregnant. My wife and I both bought houses the same day of our first date. We closed at the same title company, had our first date that day. So we're renting our house. The tenants decide they're going to become traveling nurses. Like literally everything came crashing down. Well, after I gave my life to the Lord, I fixed my own credit. So I learned all about credit and building credit and disputing negative accounts and settling debts and all these things. And right after I got fired, I'm at a men's Bible study. I meet a guy who has a credit counseling company. And I thought, oh, that's amazing. I fixed my credit. I'd love to come see what you do. I go and learn what he does. And I end up working with him. You know, it's funny. It's funny how you forget. I actually had a job in between that, which is a whole nother story. So I had a job in between that. We'll skip over that. I go start working for him. It's called Integrity Credit Solutions. Well, this guy was not operating in integrity. I just had this really this gift of faith, holy discontent rise up inside of me. I write up a release of my non-compete agreement. I go into work. I tell them, hey, you're signing this document. I'm going to go into business and do this the right way. And the guy looks at me, signs the document, says, Garr, I believe that you will. You're a man of integrity, gives me a computer and wishes me luck. And there's my first
Wow.
legal business. Yeah. Amazing, amazing story.
That's crazy that a guy that is lacking the integrity is fine with you just going off and being like, "Yep, you're right. I'm not. You go and do this." But so let's fast forward then now to your current business. Let's chat about a little bit about the RV side of the house. I'm as I told you before we started recording, I'm in the market to buy an RV, so it's something that is very intriguing to me, just to kind of learn a little bit about what you did and how you're doing it. And also, I was trying to convince my wife that you mentioned Rich Dad Poor Dad, and that's one of those things. Like, if I can turn this from a liability into an asset somehow, renting it out when I'm not using it, then that would obviously be where I would like to take this. So kind of walk me through your business, how you got started with Fireside, and yeah, we'll go from there.
Yeah, so it's a totally what I call a pain to purpose story. Just like the pain of me fixing my credit, and then I started a credit counseling business. Same deal. I bought my wife an RV for our 10-year wedding anniversary. I bring it to Grand Haven State Park up in Michigan, and it's all set up, and I think I'm the best husband ever, and all the things. And we're there, and I forget how long we're there, a couple hours, maybe even a day. And she comes walking out of the RV and tells me that she's going to go home. And I'm thinking, like, she's going to go home to get something, it was only about an hour or so away. And no, she was going home because she was like miserable. She was hot. She was not having fun. It was not the best gift in the world. And in her defense, she was 7 months pregnant with number 4. And she was chasing Noah, our toddler, around. So she goes home, but still in the pain of that moment. And in my mind's eye, I like to paint this picture of, like, I'm sitting around a campfire all by myself, and feeling all sorry. And I try to make a s'more, and like the marshmallow falls into the fire. And so just nothing's going my way, So anyways, I'm sitting there. I thought, well, I'm going to rent this thing out. Like, I'm going to turn this into like some sort of, a happy ending. So that's in 2016. So what do we do in 2016? Craigslist. So I throw it up on Craigslist for rent. And literally within a couple hours, people are messaging me wanting to rent my camper. So the light bulb goes off. I'm just pumped and excited. And in my mind, it all happened within hours. Who knows? Could have been weeks. But so I'm renting my RV. I'm messaging friends and family like, hey, I'm renting my RV. I'll rent your RV too if you want. My credit counseling business was on autopilot. I had all my staff and systems, and I didn't have much to do with it. Just my small meetings here and there. And so all of a sudden, all my energy just goes into starting an RV rental business. Literally, I got so excited about it. 2 months later, fast forward, all of our kids were born on C-section, which is very like you go and you check in, and then a half hour later you're in here, and then 2 hours later you're back in your room. It's just very structured and organized. And I say this, Adam, to defend what I'm about to say next. So we get mom and baby checked back into the room, and she's all tucked in and everything's all good. I'm like, all right, love, I'll be right back. And she's, oh, okay, where are you going? I got to go up to the dealership real quick. I just bought 4 more RVs. She's like, what? You're leaving? I'm like, well, you left me at the campground and now it's mine. No, I didn't say that.
That's
and
wise
so
move.
there I go.
Wise move.
So there I go. I'm driving up to the dealership to buy 4 more RVs. And clear as day, you have those moments when you hear the Lord, there's no mistaking. Like, it's the Lord. It wasn't bad pizza or, this is the Lord speaking. I heard the Lord clear as day tell me, other people's RVs. And so, being the genius that I am, I went and bought the 4 RVs. It didn't click until later that it's like, no, the whole business is other people's assets. You don't have to own any of the assets. And so eventually that clicked in my mind. And that's what I did. I didn't buy any more RVs. I just continued down asking people, hey, would you like me to rent out your RV for you? And then it went from there.
Nice. Yeah, that's really awesome. So 2016 is kind of when that was born, or was it shortly thereafter by the sounds of things?
Yeah, it was 2016 is when that was born. Uh, we I found some platforms, kind of like Airbnb's platforms, and those actually had just started like the year before. So
Yeah,
this was literally
like the
ground
outdoorsies
floor.
and that type of thing.
Yeah, so RV Share, they literally started like the year before, and it was exactly a scenario like you. You want to travel with your family, so you buy an RV, you get back from the trip, and then you're like, well, I'm going to rent it out. So that's what this dude did, and he realized, oh, there's really no websites for this.
Mm-hmm.
So he started RV Share, and then I forget what he sold it for, $100 million a couple years ago. And so literally, I was starting right at the same time as those guys were. I was in the Facebook groups for people that were doing this thing. I met a guy from the Upper Peninsula of Michigan that was like, "Hey, that's pretty cool, dude. I'd like to learn more." And I said, "Well, tell you what, how about you just kind of be my beta tester? I'll teach you everything I know. You'll be a location of mine, and then we'll go from there."
Mm-hmm.
And then fast forward to today, we have almost 60 locations around the country.
That's phenomenal. And then, but barely any of them are your assets, right? Or none of them, I should say. I mean, obviously it's a franchise model, so the franchises are your personal, you get a cut of that, but the actual RVs are not owned by you or the company, right?
Exactly. Yeah, I own two RVs. I have a Class C that we use to travel, which we don't rent that out any longer. And then I got a little 21-foot pull behind kind of retro camper that we do
Okay.
rent out.
That's really cool. Yeah, the various different kinds of businesses and how people think through them and how they pop up. Again, it's almost always, if you find a pain point for yourself, somebody else is probably feeling that same pain point. Go solve that pain point for everybody else too. And I think you saved yourself a lot more pain points by listening to God and saying, okay, other people's RVs. That makes sense. So when did that thought process, because you said you went and bought those 4 more, when did you realize that, no, I really just need to focus on other people's RVs? When did that kind of transition happen?
Yeah, I think it was literally right after that when I cut the check for those RVs.
Sign it, write the check, and then realize it. Yes.
Yeah, and then feel the buyer's remorse. So, yep, I think I sold one of the units to my office manager for my credit counseling company, and then he would use it. And we'd rent it out for him, and then it was after that. The only time I would buy an RV is if I ran into an owner who was they just wanted to get rid of it. They're like, "Hey, we owe 10 grand on it. Just pay it off. You can have it." So I would buy them, rent them out for a couple months, and then flip them and make 5 grand on the sale. So it was only short flips like that.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. So now you have, would you say 60 different spots nationwide?
Yeah, we have about 60 locations, probably a handful that are onboarding right now, and then the others are up and running.
Okay, so how did you decide to then turn this into a franchise thing as you were building this out?
That was all God again. I started doing like a business in a box where I, teach someone how to do it, and then it grew to where I was like, man, I have employees now running this. So heck, why don't we just sell locations and then my employees can help service the locations? And then it was in 2022 when I heard the Lord again and he told me to franchise it. And it took me a couple months. I was very hesitant to do it. It's a very long process. It's a very expensive process. And so, yeah, we walked through that in 2022. Around that time, we had maybe around 8 locations or so. And then it was game on from there.
Okay. So how those, that was one of the reasons I was asking, is that long process. That is a process to go through all the legal stuff and set up all the paperwork and do all the things. And how did you kind of decide to start, or not decide, but how did you work through all of those issues after having never done franchising before, like jumping in to say, hey, I'm going to franchise. How did you work through all that? What kind of resources did you use for that? What kind of struggles did you have in the middle of that?
Yeah, it definitely struggles. I just did the research on companies out there that walk you through the process. They kind of do, it's like everything in one. They're going to help you get your franchise disclosure document, your operations manual, get your trademarking done if you're trademarking. They'll help sell the franchise for you as brokers and charge a fee. So I vetted a bunch of companies. I ended up hiring this company, and it was a train wreck. Little did I know they had just launched this division of doing this. They owned like 12 franchise brands worldwide, and they were a Christian company. But they had just launched this, and I just learned this, which is a whole nother cool story, Adam. I just learned this like 6 weeks ago because one of the top executives of their company was looking into this space. He stumbled on one of our marketing ads, went through our sales process, gets on with my sales rep. The sales rep sends him over to me, and I'm like, yeah, I know that company. They franchised me. They did a horrible job. And he's like, well, I think you should talk to the guy. I get on a phone call with the guy. He's like, yeah, I do see you here. I apologize. We did franchise you. And invites me to the corporate office, walks me through the corporate office. And it's like, so that's how I learned they had just started doing that process. Because as he's walking me through, he's like, yeah, here's the division that you worked with that we launched, this year. I'm like, yeah, the year I did it. But yeah, it was a long, arduous process. And on the tail end of it, I'm glad we did it. There's so much credibility you have instantly as being a franchise opportunity. And there's also a lot of accountability. We're regulated by the Federal Trade Commission. We have to do financial audits, and that's good. That holds us accountable. That gives us credibility. So in hindsight, I would recommend if somebody's looking to franchise, it's worth the while to do it. You just got to be very, very knowledgeable on who to hire for what.
So, so for you as the franchisor, the person who's selling the franchises off, it seems to be well. And obviously, this is a semi-loaded question because I'm not trying to set you up in any way. But I've part of the reason I'm asking this as well is I literally just had a phone call yesterday, as of the day of recording this, about buying a franchise through one of my friends. So I'm trying to understand kind of the ins and outs of being the owner of the franchisee, like the person who owns the franchise myself, like who's trying to run it, and what kind of support and how did you kind of decide on, because there's so many different structures of franchises on who gives more support over here and less support over here, and these folks do this and those folks do that. How did you kind of walk through all of those decisions, and how is it? How are your 60 locations and now soon to be adding on more? How are they all feeling about it? And what sort of heartburn does that give you as you're kind of taking on that responsibility over them as well?
So when we first launched, one of the things we were coached on that we changed recently, we were coached to sell our franchise for a certain price. Well, in hindsight, it's because franchise brokers charge a 40% commission on the sale. So they talked me into a higher price without really giving me the full scope of why. So I started working with franchise brokers, and I talked to one of the top franchise brokers in the nation. And I said, hey, why do you see franchises fail? Like, what's your top advice? And he told me two things. He said, try to have a couple corporate locations if you can, because then your thumb is always on the pulse of what it's like running a day-to-day location. And then second is the number one thing that you're going to offer your franchisees, where most franchisors fail, is support and systems and community. So that has been our major focus, is support, systems, and community. Like I said last week, we just had our Fireside retreat. That's our annual retreat that we do that. So tonight at 8 p.m., we have what's called Fireside Chats. We jump on Zoom together. I'll do like a 20-minute teaching. Then we'll go into a Q&A together, and then we'll pray. We have what's called open office hours. So every day during the week, somebody is on a Google Meet where you can just click in to ask your question, and it's 4 different things. So I'm on for just mindset, coaching, spiritual stuff for an hour on Monday. Stacy, our franchise development officer, she's on for onboarding, stuff like that. Molly, our CFO, she's on for accounting and this and that. Mark, our CEO, and then Jen, our operations manager. So we have that. We have a weekly newsletter that goes out to all of our franchisees with just tips and tricks, and this is what's going on. We have our closed Facebook group where we do the coaching and mentoring. We have so many things. We have our onboarding portal that has videos and checklists and quizzes and all the things. The list goes on and on and on. We have so much in place for support and community. And it's funny because you're saying that you were talking to a company in Tampa that's for sale, and you're looking into franchises, and you want an RV. Adam, we're going to come out here in a couple months and be like, hey, just let you know, I'm now a Fireside franchisee. This might be a God appointment, brother.
You never know. I thought about that too as you were talking. I was like, man, oh man, this might be the perfect timing for the perfect connection to happen. So,
Well, the thing about it too that's cool is Ben, our franchise discovery director, he owns 2 Fireside franchises. He owns one in Gulf Shores, Alabama, and he's a partial owner in Orlando, which is our largest location because we're one of the only 4 companies that can go into Fort Wilderness.
okay.
Before he did this, he did mergers and acquisitions. So that Orlando location, Ben helped negotiate us buying that from a competitor.
Nice.
So we can talk about that off the podcast.
Of course.
Ben can evaluate the whole deal for you. He can help negotiate. Yeah. So, and you'd literally be able to plug right into the whole community.
Yeah, that has some potential for sure. Now, right after we get done with this, I'm going to have to send another email, make a phone call, and try to get that person on the line and find out what the heck's going on. But it's one of the things I hate dealing with business brokers. Like, that's the worst part about trying to buy businesses is dealing with business brokers. Because
is it through a broker?
Yeah, it's through a broker, which is always a pain in the butt because you can never actually talk to the person. There's this back and forth. They never answer their phones. They don't get you back to you. Like, I put in a thing the other day. It was for like a $4 million business, and it was like, well, how much money can you put into it? I said, I'll put down, like, put $1 million into it to buy it. And then the guy, all he does is email me back, $1 million won't buy this company. And that was his response. I'm like, well, no kidding. Like, the offer is like, it's 4 million. And I know, and I'm like, can you just get on the phone with me? Can we have a conversation? Can we do more than just fill out this spreadsheet of things that you want? And it's like, I hate it. I'm more of like, I just need to talk to somebody. If I have to fill things out on the computer, I'm probably going to fill it out wrong because I'm just not. That's not the way I communicate very well. But me, like, I just want to talk to you because I can get a feel for what we have going on. I can understand what the actual thing is. I can ask you questions, and it just drives me nuts.
Yeah, exactly. That's what happened with the franchise broker. I sold one franchise through a broker, and I said, I pulled out of all the franchises and communities. I said, I'm never using a franchise broker again. Yeah. And we created our own marketing funnels. And literally, I was just talking to a company, right, that owns over 12 brands. That went through my marketing funnel. He was saying how he was messaging his team, hey, why aren't we doing this? Hey, why aren't we doing that? Hey, look what Garr's doing. Because we just took it upon ourselves to become experts in marketing instead of just the franchise world. It's so outdated.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the business buying, M&A, business buying world itself is like, I mean, you can't, there's no real place that you can go and find businesses to buy. That's what I'm in the middle of doing is, my goal this year is to buy at bare minimum 1 business, preferably 3. And it's just like such a drag to try to go and find a business to buy. Like, it's not like you can jump on the MLS, like if you're buying real estate, you have to go through individual brokers' websites, or you have to pay a fee of, hundreds of dollars a month to go through one of those systems that kind of brings them all in for you. It's just, man, oh man, it's like stuck in maybe this is a business idea. I got to figure out a better way to do it, right? But man, it just is such a pain to do. Brokers are just difficult to work with. But
very.
So you're working with selling your own franchises. You're doing it all yourself. I'm assuming you have a sales team as well now. Is that right?
Yes, sir. Yeah, I just have one sales rep. I have a setter, and then Ben, our sales rep.
Awesome. And where do you kind of find your clients to bring in for franchise opportunities?
Typically, it's the different communities that we built on Facebook, or paid advertising on Facebook is the 2 main places, and then podcast.
Okay.
We have our own podcast. Well, we have 2 podcasts, and we do quite a few podcasts as well.
Do you find at all that so like, let's say you have a franchisee and they're out there doing their thing and they've got 5 people that they're using their campers for their franchise. So any of the folks whose campers or RVs are being used, and they're like, you know what, I should totally get one of these franchises. I think that I could do this too. Do you get many clients through that at all?
Yeah, actually a good chunk of our franchisees, they found us because we have 2 Facebook groups with about 27,000 members in them for people that are renting their RV on one of the platforms or looking to rent an RV. And so that's where a lot of our franchisees have found us, is they're renting their RV and they see the income potential. And then they have this desire to scale. And so, yeah, a lot of our franchise and several recently too, we've had a couple competitors that have just, because of the community that we built, that God has built, that have joined the Fireside family because they see the value in just being able to do this together.
Mhm.
Uh, we have a couple of dealerships that are now Fireside locations as RV dealerships. And then next month, we're going on a podcast that I think is going to get us tons of exposure. You ever heard of AJ Osborne, Self
Yeah.
Storage Income?
Yeah, for sure.
We're going on AJ's podcast next month. And for a self storage facility, that's like a perfect add on.
Yeah.
You've
Yeah,
got
for
RVs
sure.
sitting there already. So,
Yeah. The AJ's in a mastermind that I'm in. Solid dude for sure. So hopefully that works out well for you. I read his entire book. I was doing. Have you heard of 75 Hard before?
I have heard of that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was doing 75 Hard, and I'm sitting there walking on my treadmill reading a book because I need to be doing multiple things at the same time. Otherwise, I won't have time to fit it all in. So I'm getting an exercise in while reading the books that I'm supposed to be reading. And I was like, man, this is awesome. I really need to go buy some stuff. But my brain goes a bajillion miles an hour, so I want to do all of the things. So I got done reading that, and then I started researching into buying self storage. But yeah, AJ's solid. So best of luck on hopefully that does help out, because that is a phenomenal bolt on to what you already have. Like, I mean, if you're already putting them in there and you're already, renting the spaces out, like having some conversations with the owners of those facilities and doing all that would be a great bolt on. Love it.
Yeah, most definitely.
So what is it, as you're continuing to grow this out, what is your thought for the future? How large are you trying to bring this? Where are you trying to bring the company? We're recording this in January of 25, so perfect timing to try to really think about what this year's going to bring and what the next 5 years are going to do. What are your plans? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so my goals have really switched. I used to have these financial goals. I used to have these just numerical goals. But really, at the end of the day, it's just to serve as many Christian entrepreneurs as I can. I'm sure we'll be well over 100 locations by the end of the year, because we're bringing on about 4 a month right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we just 3x'd our ad spend. And so our goal is to we're just projecting that. But as far as the goal, really, my biggest goal for this year is we want to take our model all the way to the end, which in our success path, step 5 of our success path for our franchisees is where we introduce real estate. So we own the real estate where the RVs are being stored. Mm-hmm. We have propane, we have a dump station, we have a lot where we can sell RVs for owners on consignment. You make a 15% commission to do that. We have a couple of RV repair techs. So that's like step 5 of the success path is through the whole model. We call it the generational wealth piece. So that is, I'd say, probably my biggest goal this year is to have that going. And if the deal is right, we could even have a campground attached to that. So we're really focused on Orlando area and upstate New York are the 2 areas that we're looking at right now. And I'm pretty interested in Texas too. And I also want to do it like very strategically, where once the kids are out, well, at least our 2 oldest, once the 2 oldest are out, the 2 youngers, I could literally, Adam, I could tell the 2 youngers, hey, we're about to jump in the RV. They could be packed up in 10 minutes and ready to go. They could kiss this house goodbye. They love life on the road. And so I would love to have locations where I have partial equity ownership with my franchisees in the real estate, where we can travel around and just go set up and plug in and visit the franchisees and do life and stuff like that. So I would say that's our big goal for this year, is to get our first fully blown step 5 success path location in place.
That's really cool. I like that you got it broke it down like that and set it all up. Out of curiosity, my little lady's coming in to say hi.
Where's she at?
Say hi.
Oh my gosh, you are a little lady. Look at you.
You got a little tear there. Was that a happy tear or sad tear? Can you say hi? Look, he's right there. You nod your head and then just stare at the screen.
I'm showing her a little dinosaur here. She's like,
what is that? You see the dinosaur?
You like it?
Is it a cool dinosaur? What do you think a dinosaur says? You don't know? All right. Oh, you want to go follow the doggy? Okay. Can you shut the door on the way out, sweetheart?
I had to fix her sock first.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. Yeah. So somewhere upstate New York, Stacy, who is our It's funny because we've changed our title so many times in the last couple of months. Our franchise development officer, I think, is where we're at right now. Her franchise was in Rochester, I believe. I'm pretty positive on that.
Okay.
She sold her franchise to a guy, Mike McKay, who ran the #2 camping world in the country. And now he has 2 Fireside franchises with us. They want to go back to New York. She's traveling the country right now, visiting our franchises. She wants to go back there. Their lifelong dream is to own a campground.
Okay.
And so we're super hyper focused on that. So somewhere around there, she's got to stay out of Mike's territory because, he owns her territory now. But so somewhere around there, she wants to have a campground.
Either Finger Lakes or maybe up even farther north. So I graduated high school outside of Syracuse.
Oh, okay.
Upstate New York, I'm very familiar with.
Yeah, so we have a Syracuse location.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Yeah. So to me, that's central New York. To a lot of other people, that's upstate New York. But I used to live up in Plattsburgh, which is way, 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 way upstate New York. But we used to live on Lake Champlain and just absolutely love the beauty of the Adirondacks and being out there and just camp life up there, and just absolutely loved it. Sadly, it's attached to New York City, so we're stuck with all the New York City politics and taxes. So I will never go back while we have to deal with all of that. So it's beautiful. I'm looking at a business up there, but I don't know why. I feel like that's probably a stupid idea, but man, is it beautiful up there. I absolutely love it up there. I miss the 4 seasons up there. I miss being able to see the snow and being able to check everything out. And again, riding the motorcycle through the Adirondacks, it is absolutely gorgeous up there. I'd imagine rolling through in a nice camper and just parking somewhere up there would be great.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, most definitely.
So out of all of this, what do you think? What has been your biggest mistake that you've made when you've started franchising all of this stuff and kind of going through all of it? And how did you kind of work through that biggest mistake? So
the biggest mistake that I've made, with the franchising process itself, I feel like I'm a kind of like, what is that? It's okay. No, not right now. Will you shut that door though? I got one of my kids walk in now. Here. Garrison wants to say hi. His little girl came on camera. This is my little boy here, 14 years old.
What's up, bud?
He's got he's a little entrepreneur. He's got chicken eggs. He's got 20 chickens?
Nice.
20 chickens. He's got goats. He's got 2 hunting dogs. He's an outdoorsman.
Love it.
So, yeah.
Absolutely love it.
The franchising process itself, I thought that I did a good job of vetting. So I don't necessarily know if that was a mistake per se, because I'm normally kind of shoot from the hip guy, and I felt like I really researched that. But the mistake that I did make during that process was, during that process. Well, it actually started during COVID. I got very, very passive in my business. In all my businesses, I got very, very passive. And, the world kind of shut down. And we were in Florida, which shut down for a couple of weeks. And then it seemed like everything kind of opened back up. Well, I don't know what I was thinking, Adam. For some reason, we got in our RV and we drove up to Michigan. Like, oh my gosh, we were not thinking clearly. So we're sitting up there in Michigan. I almost get arrested at a Menards for not having a mask on and all this,
of course,
all this cool stuff. So anyway, I started drinking, which my wife and I had always had a drink here and there, but I started drinking a lot. We had this couple lots on this little lake up in northern Michigan. It was like our little haven. Well, during that time, it became everyone's little haven. So it turned into this whole party town. And I started drinking a ton. I got very, very passive in my businesses. And to the point of where I was selling my real estate, which was really just my retirement portfolio. I was selling off my real estate to keep things afloat and not even realizing it. I was literally justifying it like, oh, I bought this house in 2020 for, X amount. And now a year or 2 years later, it's worth so much more. And, but really, I was doing it to keep myself afloat, and I didn't realize it. And it wasn't until May of 2023, when I got COVID again for the second or third time, that I finally realized what was happening. And I actually called my friend who was in the mental healthcare field. And I said, dude, I'm having like suicidal thoughts. Like, I'm like, this COVID is messing with me. And he said, you're actually the third person this day to tell me these similar symptoms. Which if you got conspiracies about COVID, that kind of proves them true right there. Like I was having this mental attack. I was suicidal. I gave my wife our gun safe and told her to change the code. And anyway, God used that to shake me and wake me up and realize like, Garr, you're about to lose everything. You're going under. Like you're a sinking ship, dude. And so I freaked out. Literally, I freaked out, Adam. I fired my CEO through text. I just like went off the deep end. I reached out to Molly, my accountant at the time, who's now our CFO, and we just started getting on these long Zooms and pouring through the books and realized like, man, I was losing money all over the place. And it's one of those but God stories. And I repented to God. I repented to my wife, and God reconciled, and God restored. The beauty of the 3 R's: you repent, you reconcile, and He restores. And that's what He did. And at that time, I had about 12 locations, and that just shows you in lots of debt. I have one investor that I still owe about $88,000 that I should have him paid off here soon once this property closes here soon that I'm selling. And we'll be totally debt free from almost $750,000 of debt to totally debt free, from 12 locations to 60 to I know my calling and my purpose more solidified than ever before. And now I have this beautiful story of how God takes pain and He turns it into purpose. And I'm able to come on podcasts like this and really share my sin and share God's grace. And it's, yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those things that, I asked that question not knowing what an answer is going to be, obviously, but semi-thinking that it's going to be some business decision or something like that. But it turns into it was a personal decision that almost ruined the business, And that tends to be, honestly, if people really broke it down, there are quite a few of those personal decisions that lead to devastating business losses. And it's just if we can figure that out and maintain ourselves a little bit, what we can save ourselves from. But for some reason, God gave us free will, and we choose to make mistakes with it and kind of run wild, and that's kind of the way it goes. So I'd say that the ability to it's such a fine balance of hey, here's my I want to be hands off in a company to let my operators do their thing, and being so laissez-faire that you're not even seeing what's actually happening. So when you sat down and so you said you fired the CEO on via text, like, was that a realization that just you needed to take that position over, or was that a realization that that CEO was doing a poor job and not even helping you understand what was going on?
Yeah, it was me realizing that I knew nothing about my business anymore. I didn't know anything about my numbers or my margins or anything. I was so out of tune with everything. It was not Tammy's fault. Tammy was our CEO. It was not her fault at all. She really shouldn't even have been the CEO. It was totally not her fault. And it was me in just this crazy moment of panic when I did that. And it's so cool. You talk about repent, reconcile, restore. And God has restored, because that was pretty traumatic for Tammy.
Yeah, I bet.
God has restored that relationship. Her and I were just texting last week, and she shot a video for me to play at our retreat. It just, I repented to her. I shared with her all of what had happened later. I was able to send her a severance package last summer and just blow her mind. You say there's no swearing on the show, so if I told you what she said, there'd be a lot of bleeps. She's like, "Are you bleep, bleep, bleep? This is amazing! Oh my gosh, Garr, you just blew my mind." And God did what He does. He takes ashes and turns it into beauty. And now, Current day, I don't work a lot in my business again, but the work that I do, I'm meeting with my managers twice a week, and we're talking business, and we're talking numbers, and we're reviewing metrics and all the things I hate to do. We're going over spreadsheets and looking at, what's our ROAS and KPI and all these things. I never even knew what those meant.
Yeah.
And then, so we meet on Mondays and talk business. And then on Wednesdays we meet and just talk life and family and spiritual things. And I hear about their dreams and visions. And like Stacy, she just told me the other week, like, hey, we really want to get this campground and do that. So we're making that, a very concentrated effort. She wants to do that sooner than later.
So when you're sitting down, you said you don't really like doing the numbers and the KPIs and the ROAS and understanding what all that is. And so when you sit down, how do you have a system in place that helps you make sure that you're asking the questions that are going to help you know what the health of your company is? How do you guys sit down and set those KPIs? Like, is there a if you're kind of like the visionary, do you have like a COO that's kind of helping you set what those parameters should be and how you should be looking at them? What does that side of balance look like? Since that's not something you like to do, but you need to. What does that balance look like for the folks who help you set all that?
Yeah, it is totally God has brought the right people with the right talents. Mark Beasley, who is a franchisee of ours in Wisconsin. You'll talk to him when I bring you through the franchise discovery process. Wink, wink. He worked, a lot of our franchisees are ex-military. He worked in military banking for 20 years with Bank of America over in Germany and in all other places. He worked for Dave Ramsey and traveled and worked for Dave Ramsey. And I didn't know any of these things until, right? Again, I love pain into purpose. When I fired Tammy and freaked out, I caused a lot of chaos in my company. And I have one franchisee who I've still have not reconciled with. And I've tried, Adam. I was actually going to fly out there last spring. I had the tickets booked, and then our 8-year-old, her appendix burst. And so we ended up in the, ER and stuff. But the one franchisee who I have not been able to reconcile with yet, one of the things she told me is she said, you need a franchise advisory board. You are accountable to nobody. And she was right. And so I started that, and it just kind of formed together naturally, how things do sometimes. And Mark ended up being the secretary on that board. And then we were just kind of sharing resumes and stuff. And that's when I learned all this stuff about Mark. He's a DISC certified trainer, and he worked for Dave Ramsey, and he traveled for Bank of America, and he did all these things. He worked for a ministry called Center Shot Ministries. He helped them grow by a large percentage. And so God literally is just bringing these pieces into place. And I would say the main reason the main part that I play in that is me not being prideful and thinking I have it all figured out. It's me saying, hey, I don't understand this. I don't know this. And allowing others to mentor me as well in their areas of expertise. I know how to cast vision. I know how to exhort people and build them up in their faith. And I know how to see the big picture, but and same with our marketing metrics. We hired a company that taught us and trained us. Then we outgrew them and we took it back in house because we had a good measure on it. And then once we decided, okay, at a mastermind retreat, we decided, okay, we want to go faster. And the reason why we want to go faster is because the impact increases as the business builds. So as I was at this mastermind, I realized like one of my goals is to make a bunch of money to give it away and then do it all over again. That's one of my mantra that I've written out. So I realized, okay, if we want to go faster or to make that money, we need to go faster. So then we started searching, and God brought to remember, it's a buddy of mine from elementary who I've seen on Facebook works for Grant Cardone. So our marketing manager now is one of Grant Cardone's marketing managers. Like only God can line up something like that because I don't have a marketing budget like Grant Cardone has, but I have a guy that has the skill set that manages Grant Cardone's marketing budget.
That's awesome.
So praise God for that.
Yeah, it's all about. Have you read the book Who Not How?
I feel like I have,
Oh,
but I
what
don't
a
know.
phenomenal book. Yeah, it's one of those that, you don't have to figure out how to do something. You just have to figure out who's going to do it. Because sometimes, and I'll say that can go to an extreme sometimes. And me personally, I think you can take that too far, which is to the point where you've got these who's that you think know how to do it all. And then you don't pay any attention to it at all. And then you end up doing what you talked about before, where you're so hands off of it that, like, oh yeah, my who's are taking care of that, but you don't have a clue what's actually going on underneath. So you still have to make sure that something is happening in there. But, I think that most problems are solved by figuring out who to put there instead of how to solve the problem. I think, and I've probably said this particular thing probably 10 times on my podcast, but Henry Ford was sitting down doing an interview, and they were like, well, how, one of the journalist that was out there was like, well, you don't know anything about engineering or this or that, or how do you just ask me any question about the company you want. And then, a question gets asked. Okay, give me Sam. Sam knows the answer to that one. Bring Sam over. He's like, I don't need to know every single thing about this. I need to know who I need to plug in the right spot. I don't need to necessarily know every single thing about marketing, but dagnabbit, I need to have a solid marketer to be able to push this company to the next level. And that's what you're just saying, like finding the right people to plug in the right places to do the job, to take care of things. And that is a phenomenal process.
Yeah, it sure is. I read that story. I think it was in 3 Feet from Gold, and it was actually a court case. A reporter called Ford an imbecile, and he sued him, and they're proving in court that Ford is not an imbecile. And so it's literally a court case.
Okay, yeah,
yeah, and Ford's like, ask me a question, I can press a button to bring the person that has that answer. Why would I waste my mind on knowledge that I don't need when someone else can carry it for me? I'm like, yeah. And that's hard as an entrepreneur, because that's a step of faith, right?
Yeah.
To add that overhead to bring somebody on, but you've got to know what you can and can't do, and then you got to hire the rest. If you want to scale, if you want to do anything, of mass proportions.
So let's say somebody's listening to this and they're like, I love that Garr's kind of vulnerable. He's told us some of the mistakes he's made. Obviously he's grown this company. How, I want to learn more about this Fireside stuff. How do they what is the process for somebody like that? Wink, wink, or me. What does that process look like for somebody like that?
Yeah. So typically I lead people to my realestatestory.com. And they can download a free copy of my book, and then they'll get emails that, talk about the other stuff. But if you're interested, like you want to go directly to the franchise opportunity, if you go to firesidervrental.com, and then in the upper right, you hit the drop down for Start a Fireside, that'll bring you into our funnel where you can register, go to the webinar, attend the webinar, and kind of start going through what we call the discovery process.
Okay. So how long does that discovery process usually take for folks?
It's fairly quick in the standards of the franchise world. Typically in the franchise world, it could be months before somebody actually purchases a franchise.
Mm-hmm.
Most of our franchisees, they typically sign on a minimum of 2 weeks, because you have to wait 14 days by law after you've been disclosed. But usually 2 to 4 weeks, people know. They can make a decision. And I feel like the reason why our process is faster than other franchises is, at the end of the day, you can plug into almost any franchise and be successful if the company is solid.
Yeah.
It really comes down to, does the community feel right for you? And is this where God is leading you? And I think that God has done a really good job of helping us craft our messaging so that people know instantly when they come into conversation with us, like, this is my people. Like, these are the people I want to do life with. Like, so we could be renting RVs or we could be selling widgets. They're like, I want to hang out with these people. These are, right? Yeah. We're the homeschool families. We're the RV families. We're the do life together. We're the live a life of purpose. Like, we like words like legacy and vision and destiny. And, so people know pretty quick, like, yeah, this is right for us. And we've had many franchisees who literally know nothing about RVs whatsoever, and they come in and crush it.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate it. Like I said, Garr, thank you so very much. Thank you for what you're doing, supporting Christian entrepreneurs. We'll definitely have to, after I hit this stop button, go ahead and have a more conversation about RVs and what you got going on. So looking forward to that. And it looks like I'm about to get attacked by my oldest son over here as I'm finishing this up. But please, everybody, if you are interested in what Garr has going on, please reach out to him. Looking forward to this getting released and looking forward to more conversations with you. But thank you, everybody, for listening. Please like, subscribe, comment, all of that stuff, and we'll see everybody on the next show.
Thank you so much for listening to the BizDad Podcast. We hope you found some value in your time here with us, and we look forward to bringing you the next episode. If you've enjoyed today's show, please subscribe and share so you and your friends won't miss our upcoming episodes. Connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Rumble, where we continue these discussions and share more valuable content. Be the dad you know you need to be and run your business in a way you're proud to share with your kids. Keep crushing it.